when something like that happens to you, it unlocks another gear. Like, I would have eaten through a brick wall to get this done, right? And when you're comfortable, to your point, it is your biggest obstacle because you've got to find something that's going to push you past your comfort zone.
Hi, I'm Wyatt.
And I'm Grace.
And you're listening to our dad and your host of the Vacation Rental Revolution podcast.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Vacation Rental Revolution podcast. I'm your host, Shawn Moore, and we're back with our Experts Corner interviews with successful short-term rental investors. And we bring in experts from outside to talk about the good, the bad, the ugly of investing in short-term rentals. And today we've got one of my favorite guys that I like to watch from the outside looking in. I guess, Michael, you could be, we're absolutely direct competitors. We do a lot of different things, but there's people and a few people that I can count on one hand that I look at from the outside looking in and say they know what they're doing. These guys are amazing, and I'm really excited to have Michael Sjogren join us today from STR Secrets. So, Michael, this is a long time coming. We've had a number of chats. We've talked a lot in the past and met each other a few years back, but it's haven't ever had you on the podcast, which is my fault, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation today.
Well, thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it. I'm excited. This is going to be fun.
It's going to be really fun. And what I always like to start is the backstory. I've as a person, I don't know, it's interesting. I judge people by, I like to say I'm not that judgmental, but I kind of am judgmental. And one of the things I judge people the most about is what other people say about them. And we've got mutual clients sometimes investors are in different programs and everything else. And I've never had one of my clients talk and tell me anything but positive things about you as a person. And it filters down to what you're doing in your coaching and helping people build lifestyle, financial freedom. Our goal is always to help people walk into this game with their eyes wide open. But as a person, tell me the backstory. Tell me what got you into this. Tell me tell us a little bit of the backstory, and then let's dive into the short-term rental game.
Yeah. So, prior to doing all this, I was a CPA for 10 years. I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad in my mid-20s. Had the aspiration to get into real estate, tried a couple different things, was studying multifamily, was, just dabbling in a lot of things, not getting traction really anywhere. And then in 2016, everything changed when our son was born. And he was born with a very rare lung disease called interstitial lung disease. And so, if you can imagine this, he was probably 3 weeks old. We were getting ready for his newborn baby photo shoot. So I go into his room, go to take him out of his crib. We're all excited. We got all these cute outfits set out for him to take him to this photo shoot. And I look down and I pick him up and he looks a little off, and I'm starting to pat him on the butt, and he's not waking up, which is weird because he just wasn't a great sleeper to begin with. And then my wife comes in, and mom always knows. And she looks at him, she goes, "Something is wrong. Like, call 911. And, he was just very pale, kind of blue around his lips. And so she's on the phone with 911, and I'm sitting there just trying to jostle him a little bit, trying to wake him up, and he's not waking up. And so now I start freaking out. So I get everybody in the car. I'm going 80 miles an hour down Route 1 on the way into Boston while she's on the phone with the ambulance to rendezvous because we couldn't wake our kid up. And it was one of the scariest moments of my life. And fortunately, we met up with the ambulance. They got him revived, and it just kickstarted this whole really 2-year journey of week-long stays at Boston Children's Hospital, trying to figure out what was going on, him being on oxygen. And at a certain point, I had run out of vacation time, run out of sick time, had all these hospital bills piling up, and I had to leave my wife and my baby in the hospital to go back to my cubicle to trade time for money. And it just crushed me. And if you're a parent, you can only imagine how that felt. And the day that I left my wife in the hospital, I said, I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to find a way to build us a business that gives us the income we want without ever trading time for money again. And I will never put you in this situation again. And shortly thereafter, I was in a mastermind group, and I met a gentleman who was doing what we now know as rental arbitrage. Now, this is late 2016. It wasn't really a thing back then. And he was telling me that he was making anywhere from $1,000 to $2,000 a month on these properties that he didn't even own. And me being an accountant, I'm like, all right, show me your books, because I'm calling BS in my mind. I'm like, there's no way he's making this kind of money. So he shows me his books, and I'm like, wow, this is crazy. And in the back of my mind, I'm like, this model makes sense as far as renting properties by the night and charging a premium. It's like going to the ballpark. You can go to Costco and buy a 24 pack for $5, or you go to the ballpark, you buy one for $5. So the concept made sense, but it just felt shady the way that this person was doing it. He wasn't telling the landlords, he was just renting them and then re-renting them. And I was like, I don't even know if this is legal. So I'd been doing what they told me to do. I was putting 10% of my money into a 401k for the last 10 years or so. So we had a little bit in there. And I told my wife, I said, this is going to be the ticket. We're going to go all in on this thing. And so we bought a little 2-bedroom condo up in the mountains in New Hampshire. I took a loan out of my 401k, got a 0% interest credit card, renovated it myself with my dad. And we were off and running. Took a little while, but I think it was late 2017 by the time we got it going. And then just like this guy said, we were cash flowing about $1,500 a month, which was amazing. And we were going up and using it on the weekends as a family. So I was like, this is the coolest business model ever. But now I am really broke and I can't live off of $1,500 a month. So I was trying to think of ways to scale it. And I started going back to some of the stuff that I was learning about multifamily and rules of thumb and how you're going to cash flow anywhere from $200 to $400 a month per unit. And I live, an hour north of Boston. There's a lot of 2 families, 3 families, 4plexes around here with a lot of landlords. I was like, what if I just started looking for landlords and just told them about this new opportunity, renting it by the night? I'll do all the work. We'll design it. I'll build it out. I'll do everything and manage everything and just take a percentage of the bookings. And you're going to make way more money than if you were doing it long term. And so I started hosting a local meetup at a Capital One cafe because I couldn't afford to rent any space. And they let me show up once a month with my little pop-up projector. And it took me 9 months of running that and doing outbound on Craigslist and Zillow. But after 9 months, I finally got somebody to say yes and give me a shot. And then within about a year, we had 15 of those across 5 different states, just all word of mouth referral from that point. And I was able to get myself, my wife, and my mom out of our job at that point. And then we started scaling it up, got into the hotels, and then started, acquiring properties. And now we got 82 doors. I own 72. Some of them are with partners. Some of them are just my wife and I, but business completely changed my life, man. And I'll be forever grateful for it. I've been officially out of a W-2 now for over 5 years. And I don't think you could pay me any amount of money to go back to that. So
that's awesome. That's awesome. How's your son doing?
He's great. It's, it's a whole other story. And, I believe in manifestation and faith and a lot of things. And after about 2 years, one night, he just totally snapped out of it. And there's still researchers at Hopkins that are studying his DNA to figure out how that happened, because they said that there was no way that he was ever going to outgrow it. And it's a miracle. So
that's awesome. Well, that's a fun ending to that story, but it's also a scary start to the story, right? Of, all the paranoia and all the worry and not knowing what's going to happen and wanting to make sure you're there for your family and your son and your wife. And when those things are happening and then saying, hey, I'm going to figure out how to fix this. And I love those stories. I love the backstories of what gets people, especially, high producers, people that are operating at a high level and saying what really started this. And a lot of times it comes down to your back's against the wall a little bit with something. And we say, but it's also what it's almost got to be dramatic enough of an event that we stick with it sometimes. I always tell people the hardest thing is when you're fairly comfortable in life to make any major changes, because it's pretty easy when you have your back against the wall and you have nowhere to go but up, and you have a major event like you had with your son. That's a reminder that will never go away. That experience is etched into your DNA now of saying, I never want to feel like that again. I never want to do something or be in that position where I have to leave my family. And so that's it, when we have those types of events, and while they're very traumatic, it's also what springboards us into a different life, right? Changing, and like you said, looking back and say you'll forever be grateful and everything else, and all that work and effort and time you put in. There were times where you're like, is this ever worth it? And when you're really comfortable and I know you coach a lot of people, and so I'm always curious when I talk to people who work with a lot of high producers, and they see some people make it, some people don't. Some people do make changes, some people don't. I think the hardest time to make changes is when somebody's really comfortable and they haven't had something that it fires them up enough to stick with it, right? Because motivation fades, and it's we can all get motivated on Monday mornings, right? We'll go listen to your Monday morning motivation, but that fades really quickly. And something like that, it can be a life-changing event, and what you do with that event. And because you also have to make a choice too, Michael, and this is why I love these types of conversations, is not always the tactical. It's like, okay, at those times in life, you can make a choice to be the victim, or you can say, okay, I'm not going to let this define me. I'm going to let it define me in a way that I'm going to now take more control of what I'm doing. Would you agree with that?
1000%. And when we were going through all of that, I kept telling my wife, I said, I don't know why this is happening, but it's happening for us. And now looking back, exactly what you said, there's no way we'd be where we are right now in business and finance and everything if we didn't go through that, because when something like that happens to you, it unlocks another gear. Like, I would have eaten through a brick wall to get this done, right? And when you're comfortable, to your point, it is your biggest obstacle, because you've got to find something that's going to push you past your comfort zone. The funny thing is, when I was hosting those meetups, there were 2 months back to back that not a single person showed up. And I sat there for 2 hours by myself, and you could just feel like the empathy from the employees at that Capital One Cafe, like, oh, geez, like this is brutal. And every time I was like, thanks so much, guys. Have a great night. I'll see you next month. It was just like, nothing is going to stop me. This is a done deal. I will figure it out no matter what, period. And the first thing that we do, this framework that we use, Casper, the first thing is clarity and really defining what you want and why. Because I'm sure you've had thousands of these conversations. When you ask somebody what they want, it's typically, I want financial freedom and I want to travel. And I'm like, okay, well, what does that mean? It's too vague. It's too pie in the sky. And what happens if you don't get that? Well, life's okay. All right. Well, you got to find something that's going to fire you up. And you're going to have to redefine that at each level, because once you hit that goal and you are comfortable, you got to find something else that's going to push you to that next level. We were talking offline about some philanthropic stuff that we're both involved in. To me, that's part of the fire that keeps me pushing, because we're very comfortable at this point. So it's like, what fuel can I use to keep pushing, to keep growing, to keep going, instead of just resting on my laurels at this point?
Yeah.
So having that fire is everything.
Absolutely. There's got to be something that ignites it, right? And like when we talk to people, and you and I have both had the privilege of being a part of the journey of people building this and starting on this journey, in the very beginning, there's always that version of, you got to get clear. You got to understand what those goals are. What are we doing? What's the fire behind what's pushing us forward? And it's really, really easy on the very beginning to tell the people that actually have real fire, or the people that are going to say, hey, listen, that first, obstacle that's inevitably going to show up, they're going to probably think the grass is greener and go down a different road. And it almost always comes down to, what is the reason they're doing this? Like, what is the why behind this? And you're exactly right. It changes along the way. Right. And, and most of the people in my world they're higher income earners. They're hitting those comfort levels. And that's a difficult conversation a lot of times, because I'm like, you're comfortable and you don't have any reason to move forward, and you're not finding a reason to move forward. And it's going to be a struggle. I'm telling you right now, it's not going to be something you're doing, versus somebody that, their back's against the wall. They've got to make some extra money. They have a life event that changes, and you're like, okay, that person's going to make it, right? I just need to give them, show them the road that's a little bit easier, that's going to accelerate their progress, because they've got the fire behind it.
Yeah, I love it.
So
I love it.
Awesome. This is so I love the backstory. One of the things that those of you that are listening, that I always say, success leaves clues. There's a lot of things that Michael and I agree on. There's a lot of things that we do different. And one of the things that Michael does different than I do are a couple different paths. But it was one of the paths that got him started, is really talking to other owners of properties and being able to say, hey, listen, how can we partner and bring this on? Like originally when you got into it, like you said, the arbitrage game, like it's, everybody knows kind of that follows short-term rentals for any length of time. You know what rental arbitrage is, and then there's co-hosting. There's a co-hosting model. There's a little bit different than arbitrage, but you guys have helped a lot of people get rid of that W-2 job and, kind of create their own business that they're their own boss. And they do this through co-hosting, right? So can we talk about that first? And then what I wanted to is lean into the boutique hotel investing and really what got you interested in that. But let's start with the co-hosting side of it.
Yeah. And I just want to reiterate what you said, where it's building a business. Like the co-hosting is a business, right? So you are building a service-based business. And the landscape has changed so much since you and I got in years ago. You know what I mean? And so it's a lot more competitive now. You really need to dial things in order to stand out in a marketplace where there are a lot of co-hosts now. Nobody was doing this, other than the big management companies that have been around for 40 years. Nobody was really talking about this. Everybody was doing arbitrage for years. And to me, that model never made sense, to go out and rent a property and then spend 20 grand to furnish it. And then you're going to make your money back in a year and a half. I didn't have the money to furnish them.
Right.
So I'm like, I need another model that makes more sense. But yeah, it's a great vehicle. Like if you're willing to commit to building a business, right? And so you think through that CASPER acronym that I mentioned, right? It's clarity, acquisitions, systems, processes, and people, then elevating yourself to that CEO level. And then you reassess. Like once you hit certain levels, you reassess and you keep building. And the big thing that holds most people back, when you see a lot of people online talking about all the money they're making and all these other things, I know a lot of those people. I'm friends with a lot of those people, and there's nothing wrong with it. But when I hang out with a lot of them, they're glued to this thing all day.
Yes.
Like I don't even have the apps on my phone anymore. They're not there because I built a business. And I want you to think about it like building a machine. So at first you're doing a lot of the work, leveraging a lot of the AI tech that's out there now to minimize as much of the manual work that you can, hiring cleaners, contractors, all that stuff as well. But as soon as humanly possible, you want to start documenting your SOPs and looking to recruit your first part-time virtual assistant that can help you with guest communication and coordinating cleanings and doing all these things. And then you scale that up and you keep building and building and building. But if somebody comes to me and they tell me that their goal is to make, our average avatar is looking to replace 200 grand a year. That's their corporate income. They're doing pretty well. They just don't like what they're doing and they want more time freedom, right? And so I say, okay, you want to get to 200 grand a year? We need to get you to 250 to 280 so that you have the revenue to support a team. Otherwise, you're just building yourself a job. The reality of it is you're going to have a job if you don't build the systems and a team around you to execute those systems. It's a business.
Yeah.
Most people that are co-hosting, and there's no right or wrong way to do it. I just want you to understand the difference. Most people that are co-hosting, they can get out of a job, but now you're your own boss, but you're on call 24/7, 365.
Yeah.
And a lot of people that come to us at a certain point, they're there and they're like, man, I've had enough. It was Christmas Eve and I got 4 calls from guests because pipes were freezing and I couldn't be with my kids and this sucks. And if you don't get your systems dialed in and have your team built, that will be your future. So I don't want to paint this rosy picture that it's all going to be sunshine and rainbows. It's going to take work to build it up. But if you build it the right way and elevate yourself professionally to be a leader and to create KPIs and team meetings and all these things, you will build a business, you'll build a machine that can replace your income, right? And to me, that's the first level. And what you alluded to, it's like, if I mapped out the ideal journey for somebody that was dead broke and wanted to become a millionaire, I'd start with co-hosting, build up my cash flow, reinvest as much as I can in it to build the infrastructure of the business. And then I would set aside as much of that profit as I can to start acquiring real estate. You start with the single family homes, start to build yourself a nice portfolio, start learning about depreciation and financing and all these other things. And then from that point, when you really want to go to the next level and build that generational wealth, as people like to say, then you get into the commercial and the hotel space. But there's different levels to play the game. across the board.
100% agree. And I love that you broke that down on the co-hosting side because, I give co-hosting a bad rap a little bit just because I don't personally do it. Right. And a lot of our clients, it's like you said, the majority of people really, the way that they do the co-hosting is they create this it's like, okay, I'm going to go build this co-hosting business, and I'm going to air quote it because it's not really a business. Like you said, most co-hosts really don't have a business. They have a job, and they replaced that job that they had one boss with another job where they're their own boss. And that you might maybe a good or bad boss, depending on how you run your business, but really you have multiple bosses. If you have any sort of a portfolio, you've got, let's say you have 10 or 15 properties in your portfolio, you've got 10 or 15 new bosses, right? Especially if you didn't set it up correctly. And I love that we're talking about this because there are a lot of our listeners who'd be very interested in co-hosting, and it could be a very good step for them at the stage in the life they're in. And that like, I would encourage anybody listening on the co-hosting side specifically, reach out to Michael and his team at STR Secrets because they do treat it with systems and businesses. And I know that because I have clients who have gone there and have said, hey, listen, Michael and his team really treat this like a business, not like a second job. And that's where I say, where a lot of people that are co-hosts, they really just create themselves a second job or replace their job with another job that maybe they don't like, right? Because it might be, the grass isn't always greener when you create a job that you have a lot of moving parts, and now you're you're doing everything in that job, which there are a lot of systems, there are a lot of tools, there are a lot of partners that you can bring in. And this business has evolved to the stage where you've got a lot of options, but it's also evolved to the stage where there's a lot of competition. Like you said, it is the time of the professionals. The top of these markets are making all the money. And if you don't treat it like a business, it's actually really hard to make money. And even as a strict investor, if you're not going to operate at the top of the markets, it makes no sense to buy these types of properties in short-term rentals. I would never even do it if I'm going to be in the middle of these markets anymore. There's so many better places to put your money, right?
100%. And I say this all the time with students. And even when I'm speaking of, if you're going to build a co-hosting business, and let's just say you want to get to $100,000 a year, right? And you're going to side hustle it. I would rather have 5 properties that generate $100,000 in bookings a piece and charge 20% than have 30 properties that are doing $30,000 to $40,000 a piece, because those are the properties that are getting squeezed the most right now with the competition and everything else. But the other thing that I would say is, if I was starting over today, I would have been setting out with the intention to build the co-hosting business to sell it for a multiple, because there is a large market now. We've just seen it. Casago just bought Vacasa, right? One of the largest probably the largest transaction ever in the industry. And a lot of these regional management companies are selling to bigger ones, or they're buying smaller ones to consolidate and then sell them to a bigger player. So there's people. The biggest thing that people used to say to me when I was starting this was, yeah, but you don't have any assets. And I'm like, well, if you build this the right way, you do. People buy and sell businesses all the time. You're just not building it the right way. Your contracts aren't tight. You don't have a team. Nobody wants to buy a job. If you build it the right way, I've had students go out and buy management companies. I've had students sell their companies to other people. So there's that whole aspect. So I would be thinking that is the end in mind. I'd have a number that I want to get to for an exit. And then from there, I would take that money and invest it either into single families or commercial to continue building my wealth and cash flow that way. That would be my strategy from day one today.
Love it. And explain, just for people listening, because we've talked about a lot of different things. We're going to kind of ignore the arbitrage model, because I agree with you. The arbitrage model of going out, signing a long-term lease on something, taking all your money to furnish it makes no sense. You're basically signing up for a mortgage, putting money into somebody else's property that you don't own, right? Not huge into that model. I don't think that model works really well. But talk to them about co-hosting and property managers, right? Because a co-host, you're really coming in as the management partner for an owner, right? But like, I always have people ask us the different, like, well, am I building a property management business? Am I building a co-hosting business? What's the difference? And so I'd love to have you explain that, because that's a question that a lot of people have.
100%. And the terms get intermingled all the time. Yep. And the reality is, I'm not an attorney. So each state has different regulations of what you have to do to be considered a property manager. Some states, if you're handling money on behalf of clients, you need certain licenses and all these other things. And every state is different. And I do feel it'll take some time, but I'm betting within the next 10 years, they'll have some standardization across the board about who can call themselves a manager, right? A co-host in the most traditional sense is somebody that helps market the property. The funds are going to the owner and they're sending an invoice at the end of the month and taking a payment from the owner directly. That's more of a co-host. The management company is you're handling the funds. You're using something called trust accounting. You're paying all the bills for them and you're sending them a check at the end of the month of what's left in profit. So at a high level, that's the difference between the two. And there's different tiers all in between. But the biggest thing is to just make sure that you understand, and you can talk to local attorneys and talk to other people in your market to understand what are the regulations for management. You know, a state like North Carolina is very different than a state like New Hampshire versus Utah versus wherever. Every state is going to be different. So you just need to understand that going into it.
Yeah, I love it. And well said. It's exactly how we've explained it in previous episodes. It really comes down to, there are very specific rules. And a lot of times it comes down to the licensing for real estate agents, like those same type of those rules of what you can do on the management side. And you're right. It gets intermingled in conversations all the time, co-host property managers, because essentially they're delivering the same type of service for the homeowner, right? And communicating with guests, marketing properties, everything else. A lot of times it comes down to the difference of how the money is handled. Is the money going to the owner, or are you taking it? If you're taking the money, most of the time when you're using and taking somebody else's money, that's when you're probably starting to flirt with, you better figure out what the licensing requirements are, right? Versus the money going to the owner and then the owner paying you for your service of helping deliver that, deliver the experience to the guests that are coming in and out, handling the bookings, all those things. So it gets intermingled and intertwined in conversation a lot, because the service you're providing to the guest, the service you're providing to the property owner it can be very similar, right? And so, but a lot of times when it comes down to handling the money is where the difference is. And so I appreciate you breaking that down as well. So step one, building that wealth, right? The step two is starting to keep it and grow it. And that comes into investing, right? And so, and you alluded to the bigger properties, like where you got interested in the boutique hotels. Talk to me about, did you stumble into that? And then, like, to me, you are the boutique hotel guy. Like if I have any of my clients, anybody that wants to get in this game, I say, you got to talk to Michael. I know I tried to navigate this world back in 2019. I was under contract on a boutique hotel in South Fork, Colorado. Loved it. It was awesome. If I remember, it was about 50 units up there. And I went up there. This is a ski town in the mountains of Colorado, 8,200 feet elevation. So it's clear up there in the mountains. And it was awesome. I loved it. It was my kind of area. And I went in there and I just couldn't figure out how to do this without it turning into basically a job. I had another client at the time who bought a property in Wallace, Idaho, and she was from California, and she ended up having to move there for 2 years to get everything set up and get all the staff in place, everything else. And so for me, I wasn't figuring out how to navigate this without really just this hotel turning into a job for me. And I know that you do that much different with your portfolio, because I have a lot of clients who do this now with, their remote check-ins, everything else, and all these different things. You don't have to have that large staff. But I'd love to talk about that, because naturally in the real estate world, we say, okay, I'm going to get bigger and better properties, right? It's like playing Monopoly. I'm going to start with my single family homes, then I'm going to put the hotels on them, and I'm going to keep building out. And I get those, the bigger properties, because now all of a sudden I can have one or two properties that accounts for a huge portfolio of single family. And so talk to me a little bit about that, and let's dive into that world as far as the short-term rental world and hospitality goes as well.
Yeah, for sure. You and I should just take a deal down together this year, and then we'll just document the whole thing.
Let's do it. I need to get into we should just do a case study. I'd be in. We should talk about that.
So the way that I got into it, your original question, I did stumble into it. Somebody that I was co-hosting for actually found this deal back in 2019, ironically. And they brought it to me and they said, hey, things have been going really well on the single family stuff you've been doing for us. Do you think your systems would work at scale? And I said, probably, but let me go check it out. So I went and looked at this place with him. It was a little 13 unit right on the beach, beautiful location. I'm talking, you have the hotel, the street, the beach, like it's right there. Amazing views. A lot of deferred maintenance, second generation owner that kind of just let it go over time. Needed a lot of work, but I was like, yeah, like this could work. And long story short, at that point, was getting ready to get out of my job. I think I had just put my notice in, or I was about to put my notice in. And the timing of this just worked out because there's zero chance I was going to figure all this out, while working full-time job. But I said, listen, on this one, I don't want to take a management fee. I want to earn my equity in it. Right. I had got my cash flow from the co-hosting, awesome. and we were good from there. I want to play the long game on this one. And he said, let me talk to my partner. And they said, all right, cool. And so we went in on it 3 ways. I basically had a note to them for, my portion of the capital that I was going to have to pay him back. And I put up personal collateral to cover that, put my skin in the game from what I had for assets. And we went at it. And within a year and a half, we doubled the value of that property. We were able to refi it, get their capital out. They ended up going and acquiring another one. I think they 1031 into it. And I ran that one for them for a couple of years. That went really well. And then December of 2022, I was in a different place financially, and we acquired a 57 room. And, for this one, I wanted to be in my eyes, I wanted to be like a true partner. So I brought, my share of the capital, all those different things, to the deal. And so it's worked out very well, but I've learned so much. There's a lot of similarities, but there are a lot of differences. That first deal, my plan was to run it remote, to your point, Shawn, just like I did for the rest of the portfolio. At this point, I thought I was a hot shot. I had properties in 5 different states that I was running. Like, this is going to be cake. It's one location. But what I found is on a property like that, where the nightly rate, after we renovated it, you're talking $400 to $600 a night. The guest expectations are very different when they're paying that much for a hotel room. And the configuration of the property itself, it's like an old Victorian mansion that they chopped up into hotel rooms. So for a lot of the folks, especially older folks, they had a hard time just finding the room. You got to go down this way and then take this left and go up the stairs and go over here. And so long story short, we ended up staffing that hotel because it wasn't going to work. And I was going to use the third-party cleaners that I had doing all the properties around here locally that were great for years. And they lasted about 12 months and just got burnt out. It's different when you're turning over, 7, 8, 10, 12 rooms in a day in a 4-hour window. They just got burnt out. So then we had to learn how to hire people, and we had to build an in-house cleaning team. And then we hired a supervisor. But the reality was, that first year I was an innkeeper, like straight up. I was there every single day, learning the business, figuring out. Nobody that I knew was doing anything like this. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to figure this out. And I made no money that year. Like, anything that I took was just to cover some of the costs to help with the VA team and everybody else that was helping out. But it worked out, and the property's done very well. We're actually adding 8 more rooms to that property right now. That'll be ready for the summer. And it's been a game changer, honestly. It's different in that you may not necessarily cash flow as much per key or per your cash flow may be better with single families, but the ability to force the appreciation in a commercial property, that's where the magic happens, right? So the value of a commercial property, you take your net operating income divided by what's called a capitalization rate. And let's just say that your cap rate is 10% in that market. We don't need to go super down the weeds, but I want to illustrate this. So if for every dollar that I increase the profitability of that property, I add $10 in value. So if you add 10 grand in value to the bottom line in profit, you're adding $100,000 in value. So when you're doing these repositions on these properties and you're taking an NOI from, say, $1 million to $2 million, you're adding a ton of value and equity in that property that you can go back, refinance, pull some of that cash out and go do it again and again. And to me, that's where you really start to amplify your wealth and your net worth when you get into the commercial space.
Yeah.
But it's not for the faint of heart. It's not for rookies. A lot of people, they see it and it's super sexy. It really is. It's not all sunshine and rainbows. And if you don't have any hospitality experience, running single family houses, I wouldn't recommend it unless you're going to partner with somebody that has experience or you do some type of program. And I'm not even whether it's with me or somebody else, I would not jump in with both feet in that without having an understanding of how this works, because the stakes are so much higher that it will bankrupt
totally
you with one bad deal.
Yeah. And it could be over before it starts. And 100% would love to put an exclamation point on that last 2 minutes. And it is what makes it so attractive on the commercial side is being able to force appreciation. That is a huge thing that a lot of investors don't understand in the beginning. After you've been in the game for a while, why so many investors go over to commercial properties. It doesn't, my properties that I have, while I get the benefit of the additional cash flow that I create on these properties, I don't have that ultimately that big wealth building lever that I can pull, because, it's okay, I took a property from 70,000 and now is grossing, 120 or 130,000 on a commercial property that you do that for. You just added a ton of value to the property. My single family home that I did that to, I didn't add any value to the property. I'm making some more money, but I'm still banking on the value of those properties in the area and everything else on the appreciation side. I don't have that forced appreciation. That's huge. The second key is, I was going to dive into this game in 2019. I bought my first short-term rental in 2006. So I've been in the game for a little while, and I was under contract on that on the hotel in South Fork, Colorado. And I realized really quickly that it was a different ballgame. And even though I felt like knew what hospitality was, I could tell right out of the gate. So I would absolutely second the point that you find somebody that has done this before you, that is willing to share and help you navigate that path. And I will say, your group, your coaching that you have for this, Michael, I think is second to none. I've heard from too many people that have told me how awesome it is and how great you guys are helping them navigate that. So I would, if you are interested in the boutique hotel side, you go look at Short-Term Rental Secrets and STR Secrets. And where else should we point people? I know you've got a hard stop right about now. And so I know we've got to wrap up. So that I don't want to leave that out of where should we point people if they want more of Michael, more of your amazing knowledge. And you got books, you got podcasts, you got programs. Where's the best place for people to go?
Probably the best place. We put a lot of effort into our Facebook group. So every week we do live trainings in there. It's totally free. We've got a great community. We're pushing right around 10,000 members. And in the next few weeks, I'm not sure when this is going to air, I'm going to be putting together a live training. In full transparency, we're going to be selling a program on the back end. So I want everybody to know that, but we're launching the Boutique Hotel Secrets program. I've been doing more one-on-one coaching for that for years, helping people do stuff. And a lot more people have been reaching out to learn about it. So the last quarter, really last few months, I've really been building out the course and adding coaches to it from different people that I've helped take down deals. And so that'll be coming out. I believe it's in 2 weeks, but if you join the free Facebook group, we'll get you the link in there if you're interested in the hotel space or if you're interested in the co-hosting space. If nothing else, you're going to get a ton of free training in there.
Love it.
And it's just a great community. So
yeah, I know that you guys do put out amazing free stuff, and the goal is to ultimately help people get as much information as they can as they're navigating some of these decisions. And then ultimately, when you start to run down a road, you've got some options too. And so we'll put both the Facebook group as well as the Boutique Hotel Secrets, that training you're going to be doing, so people can get more information about that new coaching program you put together. I think it's going to be really good. I know people will be interested, so we'll make sure you guys, we put that in the show notes, and so that you guys can make sure you're staying up to date on that. But Facebook group sounds like a really good place to keep up to date on everything you guys are doing as you continue to navigate this world.
Yeah, and I'm super active in there too. I mean, the biggest thing for me, even if somebody doesn't join a paid program or whatever else, if I can just help people from getting in bad deals, I am more than happy to do that because I've just seen over the years, and I know you've seen hundreds of this as well, like not understanding how to evaluate the numbers, and then they go forward based on what some real estate agent told them or whatever. You can't fix a bad deal once you're in it. I don't care how much you do to it. If you buy the wrong deal, there's not much else that we could help you with. Like if you get in the wrong deal. So to me, at a minimum, I just want to make sure that people have a baseline understanding. If they want to figure it out on their own, that's cool. Let me give you some free resources just to make sure you don't buy a bad deal.
Love it.
Because there's a lot of that going around.
Yeah,
it's like
too
a joke
much
in my community of like, if Mike blesses your deal, you found one, because it feels like every week I'm just knocking deal after deal down. I'm like, that's not a deal. It's not a deal.
Yeah. And that's the name of the game. Most of them aren't deals. And that's the problem. But the wrong deal it's really, really hard to recover from. You really can't. You're going to sell it. And if you're lucky enough to recover financially, but you can't fix a bad deal. Like you can fix bad marketing. You can fix bad experiences, a bad setup, design, whatever. We can fix a lot of that stuff. You can't fix a bad, if it's not the right property with the potential to do what you're trying to do with it, it doesn't work. Right. And so I love that you do that, and I love that people have that available as a resource as well. We do the same. And it's really, it's really important for us because like you said, it's just, there's nothing worse than looking at something and somebody coming to you and saying, hey, can you help me fix this? And you look at it and say, I can't fix that because you didn't dial in the first part, which is the right property, right location with the right potential. Right. I
have this saying that I say all the time in all the different programs, and I'll say it in the Facebook group all the time too. It's, I'd rather lose a good deal than buy a bad deal.
100%. Love it.
Like,
I might steal that from you.
If I miss a good deal, that's annoying. That sucks. But I would rather lose a good deal than buy a bad deal.
All day long. And I'll give you credit, but I'm going to start saying that too, because I couldn't agree more. There's nothing more true, right? It's just, it is what it is. So awesome, guys. Well, listen, we're going to wrap up. Michael, I appreciate it, brother. I love having these conversations with you. Every time I chat with you, I learn something, and I feel like I'm, way smarter when I come away from our conversation. So I appreciate you, and I appreciate you letting us have this one live on the air and wherever the people can listen in. And so guys, we're going to wrap up. We always appreciate you spending your time with us as well. We know how valuable it is, and we appreciate you spending it with us. At the end of the episodes, I ask you two favors. First one is, we don't run ads, sponsorships, anything else on these shows. So the only way it grows is if you guys share it. Our goal is to help people walk into this game with their eyes wide open. If you like these types of conversations, then please share the show. If you have more than 30 seconds, like it or review it on whatever platform you're watching or listening on. And the final, most important thing I ask you at the end of every episode, pick that one thing you can do today to start building that life you don't want to take a vacation from. Cheers, my friends.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Vacation Rental Revolution podcast. Share this with other people you think need to hear about it. And don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review. Hey Grace, is there a website? Yes! For more amazing content and expert advice, visit Vodacy.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.